Hi, everybody. I'm one of the organizers, but right now I'm just giving a lightning talk, and it's about writing music inside Emacs. So during COVID, I was kind of bored at home, so I found this Android app that this is a screenshot of it. It's got a bunch of kind of mini activities. They're not really mini games because there's no real scores, there's no real end. It's just kind of play around with some stuff. And one of them that I kind of tried to figure out how to explain, because you can't really screenshot it because it's moving and it makes sound. It's basically a way to write music that kind of repeats over time. So there's like 16 beats and it goes. And then I realized that because I kind of what's going to come later, you'll see it later. So I was playing around with this. I was writing some music, and I realized that I wanted some extra things in the app. I wanted to go a little bit faster or a little bit slower. I wanted to have more beats. There's 16 beats you can set, and that's all you get. I want to be able to move beats around. Sometimes you type in the wrong place, and it'd be nice if you could just kind of cut and paste or insert a beat. I want to be able to undo or even to use different scales. And you can't do any of this in the app. And I said, you know what? I'm a programmer. I can write something like this, and I can write something like this in Emacs. So Emacs actually has a built-in way of playing music with wave files. You might ask, what are wave files? So I looked around, and wave is a musical file format, but I think it's actually better described as an annoying file format. Because I didn't find the Emacs libraries to write this stuff, so I had to write my own. So I had to dive pretty deep into the waves, kind of ironically. So some of the ways that I found it a little bit frustrating. So if you have 1 byte numbers in it, unsigned integers, that's fine. But if you have a number that's 2 bytes, it's a 2's complement signed integers. So I don't know why it's not the same thing. Like both could be unsigned, both could be signed. But so it wasn't trivial to go from one to the other. It's little endian by default. So if you have 2 bytes, the first byte is the smaller one, which is, it works. It's just, I find it confusing to think about. The wave spec does allow you to configure to be big endian, but unfortunately Emacs doesn't play that at all. Emacs is hard-coded to only work with little endian wave data. Okay, there's also duplicate data in the wave file. So the wave file is a series of fields. So some fields make sense. So you have the number of channels. Are you in mono? Are you in stereo? How many times, you have the sample rate. How many times per second are you taking a measurement of the sound wave? And every time you take a measurement, how many bits are in there? Those all make sense. The next one is this block align, which is the number of channels, which is a field we already have, times the bits per sample, another field we already have, divided by 8. So this is entirely calculated based off other fields. There's no new information here, but you still have to calculate it and put it in the wave file. And then we actually go one more step. There's this byte rate, which is the sample rate times the number of channels times the bits per sample divided by 8. Or the sample rate, which is something we already have, times the block align, which is something else we already have. So I just found this, once you know what it is, it's not that complicated, but it's just kind of, why would you need this? Because these are all straightforward. I don't know, maybe if you are doing something on very small hardware, you don't want to divide, it's faster to just have it. I don't know. But, I figured out you just put it in and it works. And then the last part of the file is described as the data. And at least one website I found to kind of help this understand the wave format described it as the actual sound data, which I was looking at and said, well, what is the actual sound data? What does it represent? What does it mean? And then I kind of dug a little bit more. I found a little bit deeper, some giant PDFs from Microsoft that are, that had some information. I put some stuff together that the actual sound data, I said, what is it? But I found out that it's just the height of the waveform at each sample. So if you imagine the actual sound wave going up and down, and you're taking a series of measurements of that wave. And so this one, it just starts at 8. The first measurement is at 8, then a little bit later. So we move a little bit more forward in time. Then we're at 9, a little bit more forward, we're at 11, 13, 14, 15, 15, 15, 14, 13, 12, etc. So it's just those numbers in a row in the wave file. That's what the data is. It gets a little bit more complicated if you're doing it in stereo. You have to like interleave them, but it's still fine. It's still just a bunch of measurements in some order. So now I'm going to go forward and actually show you what I built. Apparently I didn't load it. So, all right. So this is what you get when you start it up. And basically, oh, interesting. I installed, or I built a new version of Emacs last night, and it displays a little bit differently. Weird. But anyway, so each horizontal row is 1 beat, and you can see it highlighted in blue. And when I press capital P, or if I click this pause button or this play button, it starts stepping forward. And if you click, it's going to put down notes. And I hope you can hear them through the computer. You should be able to.
I don't hear notes.
There's nothing coming through? That's a little bit annoying.
Yeah, I think like looping audio back through conferencing software is always.
I think it's just quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there. It's just super quiet.
Oh, it is there?
Yeah, it's
I can hear little
probably
beeps.
probably because your mic is the main interaction, so we're probably just hearing whatever your computer's doing through the mic. Instead of
Maybe. I'm wearing headphones, so it's not coming through the mic.
Oh.
Well, let me put it. Let me put the headphones over the mic so you can hear it a little bit better, maybe.
Yeah, I can hear it.
All right, so that's just pretty simple, and we can add more things. You can play more than one note at the same time. And you see, right now I'm just clicking. Okay, so that's what I built. There's some more features, but that's kind of the core of it. So you can save to a file. You can actually export this. And something that I had to do for that is I had to make silent notes. Normally, if there's no note in the beat, I just don't play anything. But I actually had to just write a flat waveform so there's no sound, but it takes up time. You can also use different scales. For people that are into music theory, I'm using the minor pentatonic because every note sounds pretty good with every other note, but you can switch scales. It's kind of plug and play. And I wrote, but you don't see here, terrible sounding keyboard support. Because of the way that I'm doing it, the way that I'm playing notes, I had to combine multiple notes into one set of wave data to send it to be played. But the keyboard support makes that complicated because when you hit the keyboard, you want it to start playing now. You don't want to wait for the next beat, so you can't weave it in. So some things I learned about Emacs. So Emacs has buttons, which is really cool, which is what I'm using to click on. You just don't want to place them next to each other. So a demo, which we'll see. So we see here, if you put 2 buttons next to each other, it looks like there's 1 button, even though there's 2. And the fix is just put a space between them. Because they're made from text properties, it's just looking forward. I can go into more detail if anyone's interested, but just put a space between them. But I was like, I want most of the space to be clickable. So I looked into Unicode. There's a 0 with space, which is really cool. Except that Emacs displays a 0 with space as having width. So I put a less than sign, 100 0 with spaces, and then, a greater than sign, 100 0 with spaces, and then a less than sign. And you can see there's a bunch of space between them. I think what's happening is Emacs is printing 1 pixel per 0 with space, so the cursor, so point can go there, but it's not 0 width. It's a little weird. I'm not playing it actually through Emacs because play sound blocks when playing. And if you try to use async.el, no sound plays. So I'm shelling out to the native wave player. And like I said before, you have to combine multiple notes into the same one. Some things I learned non-Emacs. Side effects have a big impact on runtime. Even doing everything I'm doing now that worked fine, just putting one message statement in once in a while made it super laggy, which I was surprised by because I'm doing a bunch of sine and cosine generations. I'm adding a bunch of numbers over giant vectors. That's all fine, but one message statement every beat and it throws everything to hell. Music theory was pretty hard to kind of get get programmed. So this is how a lot of people talk about notes in an octave as intervals. You see, you have a major second, a major third, then a perfect fourth. So that was a little bit, hard. So you can also have a minor third in addition to a major third. So you don't really want to program in that. It's kind of, you got two things for the note. So scale degrees are a little bit better, but you see they start to repeat once you get an octave up. So it's closer to how I think about things. It's a little bit confusing still, but music is really frequencies. So I kind of wrote a two-layer thing where at the bottom, at a low level, we're using frequencies. At a high level, we're using scale degrees and just translating those to frequencies. I'd like to get something a little bit more better, but I couldn't quite conceptualize what something would be, so this is working for now. Some future work, I want to add drums. I want to improve that interactive keyboard. I want to add overtones to make the notes sound different. Right now, they're very pure. And I haven't tested on Mac or Windows, so I want to do that eventually. You can try it right now. It's at this URL. Some references, which you can see later. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. We're going to do a couple of really quick questions, I think.
Sure.
Somebody asked, couldn't you use 3D edges for buttons like custom does?
Maybe. I don't know how custom is doing it, and I kind of didn't want it to be super noisy, which is why when I opened it up and I was like, oh, there's a lot of underscores.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't love that look because
Right.
it makes it more visually noisy.
Somebody also is asking that you drop the link to this in chat.
I totally will.
And then another person is asking, do you know the FJS system?
I don't even know what it is, so I would love to hear about it, maybe after the presentations, because I don't even know what it is.
The functional just system, and it's also appears to be, it was linked in GitHub.
Oh, cool. I will take a look at it and see what it is. Thank you.
Cool.
I
Anybody else?
have one more question.
Go for it.
Yeah. Is it possible to change representation instead of selecting notes to just type them in like C, B, G?
I mean, it's certainly possible. That's kind of one of the reasons that I liked the separation of things. So like there's a bunch of functions that just take the actual frequency.
Mm-hmm.
So if you kind of translate, you add like a small layer to translate the whatever your note is to a frequency, it would be pretty easy. If we want to, we can talk maybe after this and we can see how close we are.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it would not be that bad.
All right. Thank you again, Zach.